Welcome back to another edition of the podcast, and it is our big playoff preview for the 23-24 campaign. As you can tell, I've got a fan from each of the sides competing inside the playoffs to join me tonight. We're going to be discussing everything playoffs, talking about individual clubs, how these fans are fancying the chances to get promoted this season. Of course, as you can tell, I've only got 5 people joining me. It's been a very hectic day today. A lot has changed since when I've all asked you to come on the podcast. Of course, it has been announced that Gateshead have been expelled from participating in the playoffs, which has kind of changed the format ultimately for, I think, every single club who's competing in the playoffs. We're going to discuss that a little bit tonight. Of course, we did have a Gateshead fan that was going to join us, but due to what's happened, he's probably not in the mood to be joining. Let's put it that way. Please remember to get your comments in. I know we'll have fans from all the different clubs joining us tonight. Get your thoughts on the situation. Get your thoughts on how you're fancying your chances. We've already got 60 people joining us, which is brilliant. Please remember to check out the sponsors cards accepted. If you use the link in the description, you'll get 50% off your order. So I think we'll basically just get straight into it then. So I want to start by speaking to Daniel. Of course, Daniel, you are a Solihull Moors fan. We're going to come on to talking about Solihull particularly, but what I want to talk about firstly, how's this affected you, this whole situation with Gates? And of course, you were meant to be playing them on the Tuesday. Now you're playing on the Wednesday against my side, Halifax.
So I think the main thing is that we've lost a day of preparation. We were meant to be playing on the Tuesday, and then we had the Saturday. Now we're playing on the Wednesday and the Saturday. So automatically, not got as much time to prepare. But I mean, it's all been a farce today, I think. The National League has just been so unprofessional with how they've dealt with it. Announcing Moors had a bye. Firstly, that never made sense. It always had to be that Altrincham got that bye as they finished 4th. That always made the more sense. And then they stated it'd be Moors and Halifax versus Bromley away in the original thing that they posted, which didn't make sense based on what they did earlier. And then they changed it to then the Moors play Halifax. And yeah, they put so much emphasis on the past seasons to make the National League professional, make sure that everything they do is by the book. And yeah, today just wasn't like that. And now it's just completely all changed for everybody.
What frustrates me about the whole situation, and I think for every club here, is over the last couple of seasons, the National League has made a lot of steps going forward to actually improve, the quality of the division. We can all agree we've had some massive sleeping giants that have been in this division in the past couple of seasons. I think all of us will be wanting 3 up, 3 down in the future. For those of us that don't get promoted this season, we'll be wanting that in the future. And this kind of just contradicts everything that we're wanting, because the EFL just look at this and say it's such a farce and so unprofessional, the National League. They're not going to be wanting to do that. Tom, I want to get your input because, of course, we look at Halifax. We're going to talk about them quite a lot tonight. We were meant to be playing Altrincham on the Wednesday. We've booked a place into the playoffs now, finishing 7th, going away to Altrincham. I were quite happy with that, to be honest, overall. I were quite confident going into that game. I thought it was going to be something a little bit different about that game because of what's happened in previous years between the two sides. Instead, we're going away to Solihull Moors now. What's your overall opinion on the whole situation? And of course, Halifax having to move to Solihull.
Well, it's an embarrassment. The National League is pretty much a full-time league. It's basically League 3, but I don't think any of the leagues above the National League would have made such an embarrassing hash of what they've done today. I mean, I've travelled back from Eastleigh today, and when I set off, we were playing Altrincham, and now we're playing Solihull. It's ridiculous. Halifax, since they beat Eastleigh, since yesterday afternoon at 3:00, have been thinking about Altrincham and how they can prepare for that, and then all of a sudden, a day later, they're told actually you're playing Solihull. So, I mean, Millington has said there's no excuse culture. They're not going to make excuses or have room for excuses. But, I mean, it doesn't get much more of an excuse than that. The preparation's been completely turned on its head. Whether it's a preferable change, I can see what you're saying, because they won at Altrincham on Boxing Day and played really, really well. They lost to Solihull at the Shea and drew 1-1 at Solihull this season. So looking at that, maybe it's a change for the worse, but you're not going to get any easy games at this level. It's probably 6 and 2 threes, I would say, going to Altrincham or Solihull. I think it's just the ridiculousness of having to rip up all the plans and the processes about going to Altrincham, and now you're told actually, on when was it, 5 o'clock on a Sunday, whatever, you can play a Solihull for. If it was a game that between two mid-table teams, nothing riding on it, fair enough. But it's a playoff game to try and get into the Football League. It's ridiculous.
It certainly is. And, we've had people already come in. We've even had a few Gateshead fans that have joined us. Mr. Luke, someone that's tuned in throughout the full season, and said, I have no words today, lad. Instead, really gutted, he said, and you would be. Halifax fans coming and said, beyond a disgrace what has happened today. Not just the Gateshead decision, but then the complete mess afterwards. Tom, who's a Solihull Moors fan, coming and said, absolute joke what has happened today. And then Ash, who's an Aldershot fan, also said, Mr. Luke feels so sorry for you and all your fans. You earned that spot. And that's coming from an Aldershot fan as well. Get all your comments in, people. We've had a lot of people that have sent their condolences to Gateshead after the news that's happened today. Johnny, of course, you've been an Altrincham fan, finishing 4th. Potentially, it's been quite a positive day in a way for you guys, having that bye. It makes it a little bit easier. Your run to the final now, having to play that one less game. However, of course, you're having to go to Bromley, I believe it is now. What's your overall opinions of the day and how it's affecting you as an Altrincham fan?
Well, you could say that, Luke, but for me, I just think it's an absolute, it's not just a farce, it's a disgrace. It's an absolute disgrace what's happened. I feel for all the clubs, I've just, listened to Dan's point there about Solihull, how it's affected Halifax in terms of preparation. These teams and players and clubs have put everything into getting into these, playoff places to have it tore up. The Gateshead fans as well, everybody connected with Gateshead, I know Marcus Denanga, who's there, who came from Altrincham, who's had a great season for Gateshead. I feel for them as well. National League, non-league football, it's a real community, isn't it? And I just feel for everybody connected with these clubs. It's an absolute disgrace. There's no other word to describe it. And I feel for every club, everybody that's on here at the moment. Yeah, you're talking about Altrincham getting a bit of a bye and playing Bromley, but we were preparing to play Halifax on Wednesday night. It's just, honestly, there's no words. There's no words. As I say, I just think it's a disgrace.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. And I think all of us have all been affected by this as well. And all of us, I think, in a way, in my opinion, when it initially happened, I just thought, I felt so sorry for those Gateshead fans, the ones who've travelled up and down the country. We've had Mickey who's coming into Gateshead fan, said, I'm raging, totally gutted too. I could strangle someone, but I'm not sure who to strangle. Was it our council? Was it the EFL? Was it our club? I feel for our players and management. We've got 142 people watching along Twitter and YouTube combined. A lot of people getting your thoughts in. Please keep giving your opinions in. Michaela, I want to come to you firstly. Of course, we look at the situation, and of course, it's an awful situation. I think the National League, within a way, and Gateshead admitted, have tried their best to, allow Gateshead to participate in the playoffs, but it's just kind of down to the EFL why it's not going to happen, because if they won the playoffs, they wouldn't be allowed to participate in the EFL. What would you have done? Because we've got a poll on YouTube saying, would you have left it how they originally said, where they said that Solihull would get the bye? Would you have just swapped Aldershot and Gateshead around and allowed Aldershot to participate in the playoffs? Or would you keep it how it is and you think they've done the correct decision?
Is that for me?
Yeah.
I think the real question for me is really straightforward. When did the National League know this was an issue? And that's the thing. In all of the kind of statements that have come out today, that's what's not being clarified for me. And the reason why I think that's not being stated is because it would not surprise me if this has been going on in the background for a very long time. And if I'm right, and it's been going on in the background for a long time, it means that they had plenty of time to sort out what would happen if it reached such a situation, right? And the reason why I make that point is that means they had time to set out a contingency plan. You can't tell me that they only decided today through about 4 different statements, oh, we'll do this. No, in fact, now we'll do this. Oh, in fact, actually, we're going to do this. That contingency plan should have been sorted and announced to the league, 2 months ago, 3 months ago? Like it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Now, what that also suggests is they must have been hoping Gateshead didn't get into the playoffs. Because otherwise you would have had a plan for all the other teams in the playoffs. So what I would have done, the easiest thing to do would have been let Gateshead play the playoffs. Actually, let them play, and if they win it, well, the runners-up go into the Football League. If they don't win it, well, there's no problem. And also, I know there's the EFL rules, but I'm just going to use this analogy. When Luton got into the Premier League this season, wasn't there certain ground gratings that they were given with regards to getting into the Premier League and sorting things out? Are we really saying that the relationship between the EFL and the National League is so terrible that there was no kind of grace to look for a loophole and maybe get this sorted and so on and so forth? So that was probably option 1. And then option 2, I'm sure everybody on the panel agrees, league rules or no league rules, how difficult would it have been to get together all the member teams and say, listen, there's a situation with Gateshead. They might not be able to go up. Do we agree to change the rules on this one-off random occasion and just let 8th place take their spot? Come on, it couldn't have been that difficult. That's what I would have done.
I think you make a very good point there, and quite a different one for my opinion in a way, and what I was thinking. Like for me personally, if it was my choice, I would probably say swap Aldershot and Gateshead around. In a way, that's what I would do. I'd promote Aldershot to 7th, Halifax would play 6th, and then 6th would play 5th, and 7th would play 4th. So it'd be Altrincham v Aldershot, Halifax v Solihull. That's what I'd do, trying to take away from me being a Halifax fan as well. Ian, what's your whole opinion on the situation, and what would you have done as a Barnet fan and as well?
Yeah, I think everyone on the panel summed it up really well. I think in football, particularly with social media, and we've seen it with Aldershot recently, that there's a lot of manufactured outrage online about things. But I think this is genuinely something that is really, really wrong. I agree with what Mikel said there about the fact that they had plenty of time, I'd imagine, to sort this. This seems to be some sort of lease issue around a 10-year lease to play in the EFL. So I'm surprised they weren't able to sort that. And I think the key thing for me is, and the reason that I'm really sad about it, is because the reality is, of the 6 of us on this call, 3 of us at least are going to be disappointed in 2 weeks' time because we haven't got what we want. And you've got to take the long-term view on this. In the short term, this is better for Barnet because we've ended up with a game that's 24 hours further down the road, which gives us more preparation time. But very few Barnet fans will be happy with that because in reality, it is about the long term. Like all of the clubs that we represent and support are clubs that have been bouncing near the top end of the National League or in the National League or lower than National League or lower end of League 2 in the case of Barnet and Halifax to some extent for a long time. We're going to be here again at some point in the future. And what we want is transparency and we want clarity from the organising body. I do think if the bigger clubs were involved in the playoffs, and by that I mean Oldham, even the teams from last year, York, we wouldn't be dealing with this shambles. And I think that to some extent, because it's slightly smaller clubs, with the respect to all of us on this call, and not the biggest clubs in terms of fan base in the National League, I think that's perhaps been a reason why the National League have been able to kind of fudge it in the way they have. I don't know how I feel about the 8th place taking the position from Gateshead. I think in the short term, perhaps that's fine. And if you look at the precedent of Southend, who have lost 10 points, you can say that there are situations where things that have happened off the pitch have had an impact on the league table. So I'm happy to go ahead with that. But it should never have got to that stage. It seems extraordinary to me that a leasehold issue has emerged in the last 24 hours that's required the stuff we've seen this afternoon. And I think quite a lot of people have said quite rightly that this really undermines the argument for 3 up, 3 down and the kind of professionalism of the league. I don't know about the relationship between the EFL and the National League. And as I said, there is some manufactured outrage because people don't always realise the National League isn't a kind of big shadowy organisation that sits in a room. It's representatives of the member clubs in the league. But it just seems really unfair on Gateshead, on the fans, to string them along all this way and then to take it away from the last minute. And even if 1 or 2 of us in this call benefit from it in the short term, in the long term, we all benefit from a league where there's transparency, there's clarity, and that everyone knows they're competing on the pitch, and that's where things are going to be decided. So I really do feel for Gateshead. With respect to everyone on the squad, I think they are a very, very strong side. So on a sporting level, like, you know, obviously it's an advantage to lose one of your biggest threats, but in the long term, it's not about that. We want to go through this process and, you know, enjoy it and win it on the pitch where I think everyone wants to win it, really.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you've said there. And, you know, I think about when you look at Gateshead at the moment, you know, you look at them throughout the whole season, you know, what they've had to go through this season to still be with us in the playoffs, and in quite a healthy position in the playoffs, says a lot about them. You know, we're forgetting that their manager departed about a third into the season. They coped well with that. Then in January, their squad got stripped apart. Players got moved on to bigger and better things. Players got injured and had long-term injuries. Players were recalled as well. Yet they've still found themselves to regroup and being, you know, finish fifth at the end of the day, which I believe they did. So for me, when you look at Gateshead, I think it just feels so wrong when something like this happens. And, you know, you feel for all their fans, even us. I know we all want our side to get promoted this season, but I think we can all understand, because we've all had our issues financially in the past, that when something like this happens, you do have to feel for them. People have come in and given their thoughts as well. And someone who's a working fan, of the club since coming up is amazing, and now he's really gutting that the fans don't get to have that playoff run that they deserve. We've also had people come in tonight. And then Stingstone, I think it was a Maidstone fan, I believe, said that EFL should have fired the council until they were satisfied and allowed Gateshead to compete. And then Ash has said, in my opinion, Aldershot shouldn't be allowed instead. We did not earn our spot, so we go again next season. Now Gateshead are gone. I'll be cheering you, Shaman, on through it all. Thank you very much. And then Adam's come in and said, how do you, a Halifax fan, feel about potentially having one last day of preparation to play Barnet on Saturday? As a Moors fan, would rather the game either played Tuesday or move the semi to the Sunday. Tom, I'm going to ask you, and I'm going to ask Daniel as well. Tom, firstly, what's your response to that?
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing that struck me today. I don't understand why, you know, you've now got the situation, if Halifax have been effectively bumped up to, you know, if Halifax and Solihull are the 5th and 6th teams, then that game was supposed to be played on the Tuesday night, wasn't it? So I don't understand why that's being played on Wednesday, which is a bit of there's so many other issues that's just kind of 78th on the list of questions. It's just crazy. I completely agree with what was said before about, you know, I cannot believe that the first time the National League found out about this Gateshead issue was today. I cannot believe that is the case, in which case, why has it only come out today? It's absolutely shocking. It just would not have happened this way in the Premier League or the Football League or, you know, the elite level of any other sport. And I think every club that's been affected by it has got a right to be absolutely outraged. And I'd agree with you, Luke, about Aldershot. I think, you know, if one of the playoff teams has to drop out, then for me, it has to be, you know, why not go to the next level down, which is Aldershot, and include them? I don't really understand why that's not happened. There's so many unanswered questions. It's just a farce.
Yeah, I'd agree. Daniel, what's your response to that?
I completely agree with Adam. It would have made complete sense to have moved the semi to the Sunday, because I don't think it's fair on Halifax and yourselves that you had so many games towards like the end of last week, and then you then have to play Tuesday. Moving it to Sunday would have been the logical thing to do, and having the other game on the Saturday, that would have been what I would have done. But the National League, as we've just discussed, really doesn't think about things in the most logical of ways.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And we'll have a look at the poll and see what people have been saying then. So we put a poll out earlier on YouTube, and there's quite a large amount that are watching on Twitter. So if you want to move along to YouTube, you can, of course, get involved with the polls that we are doing. The poll was, what should have the EFL done? Aldershot swap for Gateshead, 44% of the votes have said that. Given Solihull the bye, 15%. And then they've made the correct decision, 42% have said that. We'll close that poll now. Of course, Makel, you came along and put quite a good point together, just allowing them to actually play in the playoffs and participate, which was quite an interesting point of view, but not something that I totally disagree with, to be honest. I think, to be honest, lads, we'll probably move on from that conversation now and we'll start just talking about overall about the playoffs and about our team. So, Ian, I want to start with you then, Barnet. What a brilliant season that you guys have had. I think after last season, some fans might have thought it was a bit of a freak season and you weren't going to repeat that. Yet you've done one better, and it does feel like you're really building something, even if you don't get promoted this season.
Yeah, I mean, to kind of put all of you at ease, this is our 7th time in the playoffs, and we've never once made it before through a semi-final. So it's highly unlikely we'll do it again this season. But it's been a brilliant ride for us, and I think all the clubs in this call have been on a fantastic trajectory. Particularly I'd say the sides that have transitioned from, I think Altrincham have transitioned to being full time. I believe if that's right, Johnny. And you've been incredibly impressed by the way you've gone about your business. Halifax as well. Bromley have always been up there as well. So I think there's a lot of really good sides in the playoffs. We've had a fantastic season. We were in a really bad spell 2 years ago when Brennan took over. We were really worried we were going to drop into the National League South. And the simple thing for us has been just phenomenal recruitment and phenomenal management by Brennan. We're not the most attractive side. I think it's fair to say that the Altrincham probably take that tag in this group of playoffs now that Gateshead are out. But we're effective. We're a very honest side. We're very hardworking. We've got a good home record. The difficulty for us is that sometimes over the last few years, we've come unstuck in the big games. We lost to Boreham Wood in the semi-final last year. In the semi-final last year, or the quarter-final it would be, and we played quite poorly. We lost to Bromley away. I don't know if you were at the game, Mikel, where we lost to you in the FA Trophy quarter-final, but we never really got going in that game at all. And then Gateshead away last year in the FA Trophy semi-final, we lost that after going 3-0 down. So there's a kind of a bit of a question mark over bigger games. And also our record against the top 7 hasn't been brilliant, although it has improved in recent weeks. So we're really excited. We haven't been to Wembley since 1972, sorry. So for us, getting there would be incredible. It's probably the best chance we're going to have to do it, because I think even York and Oldham can't mess up this season as they did as much last season. So we're excited. I think, we're feeling quietly confident. I think, as I'd say, I think the big game experience, Bromley in particular, have got experience going to Wembley in a very effective side, I think, from what I've seen. So we're not guaranteed on getting to the final, but we're just looking forward to a sleepless week. And I'm sure if today's anything like what it's to go like, the National League playoffs are always chaos, whether it's on the pitch, off the pitch. So we're just going to lean into it and enjoy it the best we can.
What I find quite so fascinating about these playoffs is that there's no massive club. If that makes sense, there's no club that's just out there. So let's say Oldham were a sneak team. They're probably, no disrespect, but they're a lot bigger than all of our clubs. Where what's good is there's a massive opportunity for one of these sides to either return to the EFL or get there for the first time, and it would mean so much if whoever others do it. For example, Halifax, we went bust, we've had to reform, we've built our way all the way back up. It would mean so much. Barnet have had the financial issues in the past. They could have actually gone down to the National League South, yet they've rebuilt and have put a strong point together why they could return to the EFL. Altrincham, the history there with them actually probably deserved to have that opportunity in the EFL, but due to old rules where it was due to a voting system, they weren't allowed to get into the EFL. And then you look at sides like Bromley and Solihull, who built up over the last couple of years to get into the National League and are wanting to make that step forward. Johnny, I want to start with you then on Altrincham then, because they're a side for me that at times this season I felt were going to fall away. I thought at one point they were going to fall outside of the playoffs. Yet they've stuck together. They play some of the most attractive football, I would say, as Ian alluded to. Probably play the nicest football in the playoffs. How confident are you going into these playoffs? Of course, you don't actually have to play midweek now, so you've got a full week off to prepare.
Yeah, it's been a great season. Look, for Altrincham to finish 4th, I mean, take on board Ian's comments about how attractive football Altrincham play. We've played some fantastic football. Chris Clark is outstanding at this level. I don't just want to single him out though, because defensively we've been really good this season as well. So we go into it with confidence. I think we've finished something like 17th, 14th, 17th, something like that last 3 seasons. So to finish 4th and transition, into full-time football is fantastic. Credit to the board for investing. But credit to Neil Sovell and Phil Parkinson, the manager, because the style of football as well. It really is great to watch. The fans that are coming up and turning up week in, week out to watch Altrincham are watching some great stuff. We score a lot of goals, but the big thing as well this season for me, Luke, has been how we've defensively solid we've been. We bought an Ethan Ross, a goalkeeper. He's been magnificent. Lewis Baines, Jake Cooper at the back, who you'll know from, started off at Rotherham. He's been fantastic, as has Eddie Jones and Lewis Banks defensively. So we've been really good. And you've got to remember as well, we lost Isaac Marriott, who has been outstanding since we signed him from Bradford Park Avenue. We lost him in the middle of the park, and we've still been able to carry on and get into the playoffs. So it's been a fantastic season, and we'll give it everything. It won't be easy against Bromley. It wouldn't have been easy against Halifax. Not at all. Some of the games we've had over the last few seasons. But we'll go in there and we'll give it everything we've got. And, let's see what happens. It's been a great season so far. But Bromley will be tough. No doubt about that.
Yeah, and that's a good point to come on to, Bromley. Mikel, of course, we look at Bromley throughout the season. They're a side that I think a very industrial side, play quite a contrasting style to Altrincham, you would say. And it is effective, to be fair, under Andy Woodman, and has been for a number of seasons now. Now, you, of course, have that experience in the playoffs. You've been under a number of playoff campaigns, Bromley. Do you feel that this time it could potentially be your time?
It's a good question. I think first things first, I've got to give a shout out to Andy Woodman. I think the job he's done at Bromley over the last, 3 and a bit seasons, 7th FA Trophy winners, 7th, and now 3rd this season. We're not the most fashionable club in the league for sure. I like your use of the word industrial. Some would say agricultural. But do you know what we are? We're the quintessential National League team. Depending on those on the panel and how many years your side's been in the National League, Bromley play the style of football that gets you in the playoffs in the National League. Defensively resolute, men behind the ball, have a good striker who scores at key moments in Michael Cheek, and that's all you actually need, a strong spine, you can defend, and somebody who scores when it matters most. If you have that in the National League, you're pretty much top 10, top 7 guaranteed, as long as you're playing to a very, very strict plan. This is the first season where Bromley enter the playoffs as a side. I don't want to say expecting to get to Wembley. I would never say that, but knowing that they may never get a better opportunity. Next season, if Southend get their finances sorted, if Oldham get their selves together, if Forest Green come down and spend loads of money, next season it may not be as straightforward as this, where with respect to Barnet, Halifax, Solihull, Altrincham, etc., this is probably one of the, hopefully you'll understand what I'm saying, this is probably one of the playoffs with some of the smallest teams making it into the playoffs before, where there's no obvious standout side. If you see where I'm coming from, there's no big giant, no fallen, yes or no Barnet being in the EFL, but you know what I mean, there's no big fallen EFL giant in the playoffs. So it feels like it's a winner take all, it's up for grabs type moment right now. What I would say is, before we went live, I said Altrincham was the team I feared the most. And probably it would have been Gateshead as well, but for the 10,000 games they had to play in like 10 days. Altrincham, Gateshead and Aldershot have played the best football in the league all season, without a shadow of a doubt, right? And I fear Altrincham because they play a style of football which is a direct clash with Bromley. But in many ways, Bromley prefer to play teams that try to impose their style, because Bromley's game plan, first and foremost, is we're not going to concede. So we prefer teams to come on to us, because that inevitably leads to the one Michael Cheek chance, if you see what I mean, which Cheeky tends to put away. That said, if I was an Altrincham fan, and obviously Johnny's here, if I was an Altrincham fan and I had to play Bromley, I would be ecstatic that I had a week to prep for it, rather than 3 days or a 2-day turnaround to win an eliminator and then go to Bromley. So, and you alluded to it, Luke. If you're Halifax, Altrincham or Solihull, with all the omni-shambles that's gone on today, the least affected team from all of this omni-shambles is probably Barnet, because they were always going to play at home. They were always going to play on Saturday no matter what. And apart from that first statement when it looked like Solihull would get the bye to play them, ultimately Barnet haven't been affected by any of this, really and truly. So for Solihull, Halifax, and Altrincham, it's a free hit. It's a free hit playoffs. There's absolutely no pressure on those three to have to. Do you get what I mean? They don't have to produce the goods. They can go to Bromley and Barnet on Saturday and Sunday, respectively, whichever teams it is that ends. Sorry, the teams that have to do what they have to do, and ultimately say, "Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. We'll go there. We'll try and play 90 minutes of our best football, and let's see what happens." All the pressure's on Barnet and Bromley. Let's not get this twisted. All the pressure is on Barnet and Bromley to make it to Wembley. Second and third should be the ones making it to Wembley, but this is a very strange. Because of today, it's now a very, very strange scenario. So everyone's got a free hit at Barnet and Bromley, as far as I'm concerned.
Do you, Michael, I know you alluded to it there. Does everyone, this is kind of a question genuinely to everyone, do you all see this as probably the best opportunity that you're going to have of getting back into, or getting into the Football League, I should say?
I probably shouldn't say this, so I'll try and pick my words very carefully, because put it this way, if Bromley don't go up this season, I think internally the club will realise, okay, so, and I think this goes for a lot of teams in the National League, it's going to be very, very interesting next season who is the club that tries to do a Chesterfield. And what I mean by that is obviously buy players who are obviously too good for the division, right? And put them all in one big squad and say, we're just too good for you. There has to be one club in the league next season who has to try and do that. So it's going to be very interesting to see who decides to essentially try and bankrupt themselves to win the league, because that's the only way to guarantee your way out of it.
What does everyone else think then on like that? Do you think this is the best opportunity for you guys? Because for me personally, I think it is, because I think next season, Oldham will try to do what Chesterfield did. They tried to do it this season, but we all know they failed, and we put them to shame. Southend had the points deduction, and for me as a Halifax fan, I'm glad they did, because we wouldn't have got in. And even if they did, I think they would have been a side who'd be a massive dark horse. And then, of course, there's York as well, who failed this season, in my opinion, with the amount of money that they've spent. And we've all put them to shame with the budgets that we've all got. And that's something what's so special about this group of teams, is how well we don't have the biggest budgets, but how well we've worked, off the field to recruit right and how to set up. But do you all see this as the best opportunity?
I think I'll jump in there. I think for me, whatever level of football you play in, football money talks, doesn't it? And I think that's your point, Luke. About these big hitters. Southend, Oldham, Rochdale, even. There's some big clubs that, if they get the finances behind them, they're going to be really strong. We saw the clubs that have gone up recently, over the last few years, your likes of Wrexham, Stockport, playing in front of 10, 12,000 packed houses. Watch Wrexham on, they're playing some absolute wonderful football. So, yeah, I think everybody on this panel would agree that we've all got a chance of going up, and that's what you want. But as I say, and I'm going to come back to it, I still feel for Gateshead. I really do, because it's just not right what's happening. It's just it's just not right. But we are where we are, and Altrincham will just prepare now as well as they can for Bromley. At the weekend. It's a massive opportunity, absolute massive. And I take Michael's point as well. You're right. The pressure is on Bromley and Barnet to win those games, and we'll come and we'll just give it everything. But it's going to be one hell of a game, isn't it? For sure.
It certainly will be. And Tom, just coming to you on Halifax, of course, we're the only side here that didn't know if we're going to be in the playoffs until Saturday. It did come down to the final day for us guys. We probably should have wrapped it up earlier, but under the circumstances this season, I think we've done very well because of the budget, but also, as everyone is aware, we had to move grounds as well, and move to Accrington and play a game at Chesterfield as well. Tom, how are you feeling going into these playoffs? Because for me, compared to other times when we've been in the playoffs, I don't go in with any nerves, to be honest, because I just think the pressure's off us totally, because we shouldn't particularly be in these playoffs, considering if Southend didn't have that points deduction, we wouldn't be in there. So I personally think the pressure's off us. And how would you summarise this season as a whole and going into the playoffs? I'll just unmute you.
Sorry, if you ordered the National League in terms of budgets from top to bottom, then Halifax will probably be in the relegation zone. So if there is going to be a team next season that throws everything at it, I think the one team it's not going to be is Halifax, unfortunately. But it's an outstanding achievement to be in the top 7. It's not been pretty at times, and there's a section of fans who have been not on board with Millington and some of the decisions he's made and some of the tactics he's employed. But you can't argue with the results. And I think Millington will probably say it's had to be that way because the budget just hasn't been there. They've had to, that's kind of funneled the direction of the team in a certain way. I agree with a lot of what Mackell was saying, and certainly around having a goal scorer is a massive advantage in this league, and that's something unfortunately Halifax don't have. They haven't got anyone in double figures, so ultimately that could prove to be what costs them in the playoffs. I think they've got this far on togetherness, team spirit, solidity, resilience. Defensively, they've been absolutely fantastic. Performances have been up and down. Some nice football at times. At other times, it's been very stodgy and turgid. But they've got in there by hook or by crook, and I think from all the vibes I can get from them, they're confident, they're bullish about the chances. I think it is quite open. I think for me, Barnet are the team to beat. We played them at Altrincham very recently, and I completely agree with what Ian was saying. That they're not that pretty to watch, but incredibly effective, very well organised, similar to Bromley in that respect. I do think Barnet and Bromley are the two favourites because they did finish second and third. But having said that, it is really open. And the way the National League is, it is so unpredictable every single week. You just cannot take it for granted that Team A will beat Team B, even if it was Chesterfield v Dorking and Dorking won 4-1. That just sums up the National League. It's absolutely crazy. So there's no reason to think it's not going to be, it's not going to carry on into the playoffs. So Halifax going to win one game away on Wednesday, another one on Saturday, and then at Wembley. Looking at it objectively, probably not, but that's not to say they can't do it. It won't be for lack of effort or commitment, that's for sure.
Sorry about that. Do you go into this game then against Solihull with confidence, would you say, going into it? Or do you go into it thinking that, well, Solihull are probably the favourites, and I think on the day they're likely to beat us?
I would say I'm fairly confident, not overly confident. If you kind of put in a gun to my head, then I'd say Solihull are favourites because they've got home advantage. They've had a brilliant season, great managerial appointment. He's really galvanised that squad and lost, Kelly and your other striker as well, his name escapes me. So to absorb those losses and still have the season you've had is absolutely fantastic. I think a little thing that will give Halifax confidence is they drew 1-1 there, but they missed a great chance late on and could have won it. So they'll kind of think, well, we've done it once, let's go do it again. I think Halifax, the kind of ethos that Millington tries to filter down is let's just focus on ourselves. That's been a big message from him over the last few weeks. In terms of what they can control and what they can't. And I think all the focus inside the camp will be on what they can do, how they can win that game. And I think the win at Eastleigh, the performance against Oldham, that'll be a little plus for them as well. That they go into the playoffs with a little bit of momentum on the back of some good performances. And it's all about, for me, I think really a big factor in the playoffs is going to be who wants it more. There's very little to separate all the teams. So I think it comes down to grit, desire, determination, attitude, application. And I think Halifax have got a fighting chance when it comes down to those things.
Daniel, then, just coming to you about Solihull, then, of course. Solihull Moors, their side have been in the playoffs before. They've got that experience under their belt. They've actually gone to a playoff final before and, of course, lost to Grimsby 2 seasons ago now. Do you go into this playoff campaign with much confidence? Of course, at home to Halifax, you're surely the favourites in that. But then, of course, if you win that, You're going away to a Barnet side who I think overall in the playoff campaign are the favourites because they finished second. How are you feeling going into this playoff campaign overall?
I just want to say first that who would have expected little old Solihull Moors to be in this call today? I mean, at the beginning of the season, there was an Ebbs Fleet programme where they were predicting the National League, and they had the Moors in 18th. And a lot of prediction videos thought the Moors were going to crumble because at the beginning of the season, where did you predict them, Luke?
I had them, I think it was 18th, and my co-host had them in the bottom 4. So, yeah, not the best prediction, to be honest.
To be honest, though, I don't know if you could have put them any higher. Because going into this season, the Moors lost Kyle Storer, Callum Howe, experience, which was so pivotal in that season where they got to the playoff final. And we lost Neil Ardley. And to have a punt on a manager of Banbury United who did really well towards the end, it tailed off a little bit. It was a big decision. But it's just come together so well. Like Andy Wing is from Birmingham, potentially Solihull. He just gets the supporters. The supporters get him. He has a great relationship with Darrell Eales, the owner, who after Bromley in the trophy when we won, Darrell Eales giving him a kiss. And it was just a moment where it just looked like, for whatever reason, this season has just come together. We brought in some great experience, including Matt Warburton, who you'll know, and Tom as well from his time at Halifax Town. And he seems to have worked so well with the younger players in the squad. I think another reason why the Moors were predicted to finish so low as well is because of their emphasis on the youth academy, the elite academy. And with that, it was like, are they just going to bring players in who don't have experience in these big games, who can't get results? And that was a big fear, I think. But no, it's just gone from strength to strength. I remember at the beginning of the season, 14 unbeaten, just thinking, how has this happened? Some of those results, it really shouldn't have gone that way. And then we hit a point, and this was towards the end of November, early December, where it just didn't go right for whatever reason. Let me just have a quick look. So it was at home to Maidenhead United on the 18th of November, where the Moors lost 2-1. They followed that up with a defeat at home again against Gateshead. Went to Altrincham, lost 6-1, which was an awful day. Altrincham just played them off the park, a reason why I really didn't want to face them in the playoffs this season. And then they lost to Oldham at home in the league. And then we went to Oxford City. This was massive. If Moors lost against Oxford, I felt the decline was just ready. It was just going to happen. We conceded to Zach McEachran, and then it was a 65th Warburton goal and an 88th Stevens goal. And for me, that's the moment when it was like, this team are mentality monsters. They got the job done. And then they followed that up with a 2-0 win against Chesterfield. And for the rest of the season, they've just been comfortable getting the points, getting the wins. And it never felt in doubt. It's a really strange feeling for the Moors because it just never felt in doubt. We were just comfortably 4th and 5th, getting the points when we needed to. But going into the playoffs, I didn't want to face any of you. And I think the only team that we properly beaten significantly was Halifax at the Shea. And that was amid like all the worries with the ground. It wasn't the greatest playing surface. And I think what your club has done, Luke, is absolutely sensational. Probably the biggest achievement of all the clubs here. You had all the issues with your pitch in the Shea, and yet you've managed to reach the playoffs. I think it's excellent.
Yeah, cheers, Daniel, for that. And it's something that I can't disagree with you on, with the adversity that we've had throughout the season as well. I think we've done very well to finish in a playoff position. Even this time last week when we'd lost to Barnet, of course, we had Ebbs Fleet coming up. We didn't win there. We didn't win against Oldham, and we went down to the final day. I think it shows the character of this group of players at Halifax, going to Eastleigh and winning 3-0. And what I think is going to benefit us is we're very good away from home. The pressure's off us, in my opinion, because we've been in and out of the playoffs all season. And as Paul's alluded to here, who's tuning in, who's a Halifax fan, he says Halifax are going to be a dark horse. We are very organised. And I do see that similarity, like he's mentioned there, between us and the Grimsby side that went up a few seasons ago. I just think when everyone's playing us, we're always going to be the underdog, and I think that'll work to our advantage in these playoffs, in my opinion. And I could see us being a bit of a dark horse. Ian, then I want to come back to you on Barnet, of course. We look at Barnet. We've spoke about them on the podcast so far. Of course, you're at home to Altrincham now. Oh no, you're at home to either Halifax or Solihull Moors. How are you feeling then going into that? Who would you prefer to be playing, or is it a case of I'm not too fussed, to be honest?
I think one thing about the playoffs particularly from last year, is kind of a good analogy, because you look at every single game being decided late on. Bromley went away to Chesterfield, who, again, on paper, that was going to be a one-sided game. It went into extra time and they were very unlucky not to win. Boreham Wood went to Notts County and they lost it with 2 last-minute goals. And then the playoff final itself was settled on penalties. So I think, actually, to be fair, if anything we've learned over the last years, it's not to take anyone lightly and anyone for granted. I think Solihull Moors are a little bit slept on still, if I'm honest. And I think Daniel's made a really eloquent case there about why they are slightly underrated. I was impressed with them when they came to the Hive. I think on the counter-attack, they're a very effective side. And I think they kind of go quietly about their business. I think it's fair to say we're all reasonably small sides. I think Solihull Moors probably are the least well-known in terms of footballing history, I would say. I think that's fair to say, Daniel, than the others. So I think in terms of that, I'm wary of them. Halifax, we've had obviously a good result recently against you guys, although that was with some special circumstances in terms of being at Accrington and being obviously in the middle of a big run of games. You know what? I think I'm too old to like kind of worry about who it is. I just think I really want us to focus on ourselves. In previous games, we just kind of really let the occasion get to us, and that's been an issue. I think who will win this playoffs? I think one of the biggest undervalued factors is big game experience. And I think Bromley are really well set for that, because they've gone through that heartache of last season, losing to Chesterfield. They've also gone through being in big games and winning and losing them. So losing the semi-final to Solihull at home a few weeks ago in the FA Trophy, but also winning the trophy final against Wrexham a few years ago. And I really believe that you need that big game experience, because these games are always going to be tight. And so I think they probably have a slight edge just on that experience. I think beyond that, Mash is absolutely spot on. Sorry, Mikel, apologies. Mikel is absolutely spot on insofar as it's just about being good in both boxes, fundamentally, a lot of this league. And I think that's probably where they've got the edge. So I think it's going to be really, really exciting. I don't know who I'd rather play out of the two of them, because I think whoever it is will come in with a lot of boost and a big confidence, and I think you can make a case for either side, but we're just going to respect them, but also respect ourselves. And I think sometimes as Barnet fans, we do talk down ourselves quite a lot after our horrendous record of being in the playoffs, and I've seen Barnet lose 5-1 in a playoff game, and it's not fun. We just got to really go about it and worry about our strengths, because we are a good side when we play our football. When we get on top of teams, we're very difficult to turn over, especially at home. So from my perspective, I'm going to enjoy the game on Wednesday, assuming it goes ahead. We don't know. There could be another twist in the tail, and we could see a Southend versus Aldershot game for all we know, or a Boreham Wood resurrection from the past. I'm just going to enjoy it, and then I'm not going to enjoy Saturday, but we're going to get through it, and what will be will be. I think the final point I'd say, and again, often in the playoffs, because we're all smaller sides, we kind of feel like this is our only chance. The reality is it won't be our only chance. I think every single club here, with the exception of perhaps Barnet and maybe Halifax, I don't know your situation as well, is extremely well run. Like Bromley, extremely well run community club, have invested really well in the stadium and grown. Altrincham, I think, a real model for a lot of clubs kind of transitioning to from part-time to full-time. Gateshead, I think, are a phenomenal model. And Solihull as well, a very underrated, really strong model. And you shouldn't underestimate your ability to be up here again. A lot of clubs take a few goes to get through the playoffs, even if they're really big sides. Wrexham even, they took a long time to get out of this league. Even though they didn't have the money, they were still a big side. Don't underestimate the ability of these kind of quite ego-driven chairmen at Oldham and York to just blow loads of money up the wall. And that's not a slight on them. It's just a reality that they can be out-recruited, and players want to play for systems now rather than, big clubs necessarily. They want to go and play at a club where they know they're going to get the opportunity to develop in a good system. They know at Altrincham, for example, you're more attracted to loan players because you know you're going to be able to get them to play in a system that's going to be beneficial to them higher up in the pyramid. So as much as it's a pressure system, just because one of us or all of us apart from one won't go up this year, it doesn't mean it's game over. I'd like to think that all of us are in a position where that sustainable success can happen. And it's a one-off game, who knows what could happen. So enjoy it. But I really hope that whoever it is on Saturday comes up against a very good Barnet side and we manage to get through firmly for the first time in 62 years.
Makala, I want to come back to you because as Ian mentioned there, you've got that experience before. And I think Halifax have to a certain extent, although we've always failed at that first hurdle. We lost to Boreham Wood during the COVID season away. We then went and lost to Chesterfield, which was not something I want to remind myself of when we lost 2 seasons ago. So we've got that experience, but we've never actually won in the playoffs recently. Of course, if you go way back as well, we lost to Cambridge back in 2014. Tom, you'll remember that. Solihull have got that experience as well, and Barnet did last season. But Bromley, for me, are the ones that have had a number of playoff campaigns and have been successful to a certain extent before. Michael, do you think that's going to work to your advantage in these playoffs, especially considering Andy Woodman himself has been in playoff campaigns in the past?
First and foremost, Ian said enjoy it. There'll be no enjoying. There'll be no enjoying in the semi-final. And if we get to Wembley, there'll be no enjoying at Wembley. But what I would say, I'm going to possibly, and any Bromley fans listening, I apologise in advance. I'm going to be slightly bullish here. If Bromley do get past Altrincham, I think they win the final. And the reason why I think they win the final is because we've been to Wembley before. And when we did it to play Wrexham, that whole, and I know we can say that Halifax have gone in the trophy and Solihull. In fact, no, Solihull played at, where was it, Upton Park? Can't remember when they played Grimsby in the playoff final. If we get to Wembley, this would be our 3rd trip to Wembley in 7 years. And I think that whole Wembley thing won't affect us, is what I'm saying. So I'll be slightly bullish in that I think the occasion won't be any kind of major thing to us, even with the EFL riding on it and so on and so forth. I think, to Andy Woodman's credit, when it's those big games, we tend to get the job done by hook or by crook. Now, some people say, yeah, but a couple of weeks ago you had Solihull in the FA Trophy semi-final. You didn't get the job done then. But internally, the club saw the game the following week against Solihull to guarantee, which effectively put us on the way to guaranteeing 2nd or 3rd. By all means, they wanted to get to Wembley, but I actually think they saw the league game against Solihull as a bigger game than the Wembley, because we'd already been to the trophy final. Of course, we all wanted to go to Wembley again. But I think when it's those big moments and those big games, Bromley handle it quite well. So I see the Altrincham game as the bigger banana skin than Wembley itself. I don't know if anybody else is willing to be that bolshy. So I'll just put that on record as saying that. And just to speak about Solihull and Halifax, though, because I feel obviously they're the only ones playing an eliminator. It's interesting to hear Tom say it because, and Luke obviously is a Halifax fan. I think Halifax are quite dour, if I'm honest. But that's no bad thing. They've got into the playoffs. Like, Bromley are quite dour at times, and we've got into the playoffs. I actually think that the most the darkest horses in this are actually Solihull. Solihull are a good football team. Well, we know what Altrincham do, but Solihull are actually a good football team. Wing is a good manager. And when we beat them 3-0 the other day, don't get me wrong, Bromley played well, but if Solihull get it right, I'm just saying, if Solihull get it right on any given day, I actually think they are a big problem for any team in this league. So you can't, just because Solihull and Halifax have to play that eliminator, don't assume that means that they're out of this by any stretch of the imagination. So just wanted to throw that in there.
Brilliant. Yeah, I'm just going to quickly come to Tom, because Tom, I do know you have to go. I want to ask you one more question, and I will be asking all of you before you do. Obviously, all have to head off this evening. But Tom, Solihull Morsend on Wednesday. Fingers crossed that's going to be the game now that we're preparing for, and there's no other changes, which I won't put past the National League at the moment. But what's your prediction then?
I do agree that all the games are going to be tight. I'd be surprised if any of them were won by more than a goal. Yeah, it's difficult to call. I could see it maybe going all the way to penalties, to be honest. Very difficult to call. I'm going to let my heart rule my head and say Halifax 2-1.
I'll take that all day long. Daniel, is that something that you're hoping?
I just completely agree with Tom. I just think it's written to be a penalty shootout. I just can't see either. Like, both games have been relatively close. Like the 3-1 win, Halifax had the periods in the game, and you drew at the Armco. I just don't see us absolutely thrashing Halifax, and yeah, just penalty shootout, and then Moors to win. I'm not going to say otherwise.
Fair enough. Then we're pretty good on penalties. But Tom, thank you very much for coming on tonight. It's been great to speak to you about Halifax, and I'm hoping we'll be speaking to you again before the end of the season. Of course, Daniel, I would like to speak to you again, but I'm hoping for it as a Halifax fan that I'll be always speaking to Tom. To be totally honest, but no, Tom, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
No worries, mate. Bye, everyone.
See ya. Right, so great to speak to Tom tonight then. Johnny, I want to come back to you as well and talk a bit about you having that bye, of course, to play. Of course, you'll be playing Bromley now in the semi-finals. We spoke a bit about the contrasting in styles. Is there any concerns for you whatsoever going into these playoffs? Because the only one for me when I look at Altrincham is, I think, for goals-wise, and maybe you'll disagree with me on this, is they rely quite heavily on Chris Clark. Is that something that you'd agree with going forward?
Yeah. Just to answer your first point, I've got no concerns because I'm absolutely delighted to be in the playoffs, first of all, and we've got a great chance. Coming back to and Bromley's going to be a tough test for sure. You know, Michael Cheek, great experience, brilliant player. But in terms of Altrincham, the firepower has not just been... Chris Clark's been outstanding, absolutely brilliant. He's a sensational footballer and he can play at a high level for sure. I think everyone can see that. He's a genuine magician with the football. Some of the things he can do, fantastic. However, just to add to that, we've got goals coming in from the likes of Alex Newby, who's been brilliant since he's come in. Regan Linney, a young lad who reminds me of, you guys will remember Jordan Hume, who used to be at Altrincham. Great player, Jordan. Used to hold the ball up so well. For me, Regan Linney is a young Jordan Hume. He's strong. He holds the ball up well. He knows where the back of the goal is. There's a lot more to come from Regan Linney. He takes a good penalty as well. You know, so there's goals coming in from all over the place, which is important. You can't just rely on one player to score those goals. You've got to spread them around. And Altrincham, when they break forward, they can be frightening. And as I say, we've got more solid at the back as well this season. So I think the point was raised before by Michael. You know, if you can score and you can keep it tight at the back, you've got a great chance. So Altrincham, we've got a great chance. Make no doubt about that. We'll take Bromley all the way. We really will. It's going to be a tough game, that though. It's going to be a tough one to call. And again, if you're asking me for prediction on that one, I think it'll go all the way again. On that one, I think it'll be penalties. I think it'll be that tight.
That's what's so interesting about this playoff campaign, which, and I know I've mentioned it before, but there's no strong favourite. I know Barnet are the favourites, but there's no one that's just miles ahead of everyone else. On the day, I think any of us could beat anyone else on the day. You know, we've proven it as a Halifax fan. We went to Altrincham and won there. You know, Altrincham, I think, they battered Solihull Moors early on in the season. You know, anyone on the day can beat anybody. I know it's something throughout the division, but particularly within these teams. Ian, then going into these playoffs, then semi-final versus Altrincham. Yeah, how are you feeling? No, not against Altrincham. Sorry, I don't know why I keep saying that. Blame the National League for all this, by the way. Halifax versus Solihull then. How confident are you if you got through that game? Do you reckon you'd be pretty confident at Wembley? Because it is kind of on your doorstep.
I wouldn't be confident at Wembley. I think it's, you know, on the way to Barnet. I don't know if any of you have ever been there, but you can see Wembley on the way and then you get to the Hive. I think what Mikel said is a really good point, which is that Wembley experience matters. And I think it matters a lot because there's a real risk that you end up playing the occasion and not the game. And I think that's something that you learn, you know, in the playoffs. And again, going back to Solihull Moors, you guys have been up there consistently in the playoffs. So you think you have that experience. I think, if I'm being honest, I think that's what gives you the edge over Halifax in that game there. I think, particularly at home, I think that's something that you've got a real strength in. And then if you look at clubs who have got a real big experience of playing at Wembley, I appreciate Halifax have been there, but I think Bromley have the biggest experience there. So if we do get through, I think, you know, I don't think necessarily winning the semi-final necessarily means that, okay, we're then set to go and win the final. If anything, I think you just got to take them as individual games. But the biggest thing of this playoffs is you cannot look more than one game ahead. In fact, you can't look more than a minute ahead. I mean, again, I repeat what I said last season about earlier this point about last season. You know, we were minutes away from having a Boreham Wood versus Bromley final. We were minutes. We were goal mouth clearances. We were deflective shots away from that happening. So it's really important you don't sort of think more than a game ahead, and it's about managing those big moments. So yeah, I'd like to think, you know, I'm at home with a week to prepare, with the sides playing on Wednesday. Sure, I think we're going to be in a strong position. I think for us, getting the first goal is absolutely massive. We've never been in a big game where we've got the first goal. It's never happened. You know, Bromley a few weeks ago, we went 2-0 down. Gateshead last year went 3-0 down. Boreham Wood went 2-0 down. I think we get that goal. I think we have a lot of self-belief and we've got a real firepower to take us through. But big games are about big moments and they're about winning both boxes. And that's why I do feel Bromley are up there as competitors. I think Altrincham on their day can tear us to pieces. Johnny, I don't know if you were at the game where we came up. We drove up, a few of us, to watch the game in January against you guys, and you tore us to pieces. And I worry on a big pitch you could do a similar thing, you know, if you get going. But my sense is that in big pressure games, the sort of Barnet, Bromley, I don't know so much about Halifax, but the Halifax approach of just kind of pump and grind football and grinding out results is a good way of doing it. Because it is just about those big moments. And again, for a similar reason, you can't discount Solihull as well, because they've been in those positions for such a long time. So without sitting on the fence too much, I think where Mikel has come on and said, if we get to Wembley, I think I'm confident we can do it. I completely agree with that. And if I were in a position, I would say the same thing. For us, it's like, no, like we haven't been there in, 62 years. We're just going to go one game at a time, one half of football at a time. And yeah, I think I'm going to enjoy the ride for what it is, because it is just crazy. And this, if today is anything to go by, the games are going to be something else. You're going to end up with like an 8-7 or something mad in the playoffs. But yeah, I just think, as I said, and I think what I said earlier is not the be all and end all. Like, it really isn't. A lot of clubs, obviously you have Boreham Wood this year who are in the semi-finals and then dropped all the way down. That doesn't happen to everyone. You just got to back yourself. You got to put yourself in the playoffs. It's a bit of a lottery. You got to put yourself in there as many times, buy as many tickets as you can, season after season, and you'll get your rewards. And I'm confident that we're part of the journey to doing that. I really hope we can get over the line this time.
Barnet is certainly a club that, I know I mentioned it earlier, but last season, like I said, it felt like a bit of a freak season because it was unknown for them in recent years from where you were. I think the season before that, were you just above the drop zone, I believe, the season before
that? Yeah, we've had a really rough ride in terms of just stuff off the pitch. And a huge thing for us, I don't know if you've seen it, is our stadium move to go potentially back home to our local borough. I know people, when they come to the Hive, they're like, oh my gosh, it's an amazing stadium, amazing setup. But we've basically seen our club ripped out of the heart of its community. And for us, getting back to Underhill and getting back to our roots is so important. As you see from all three clubs on this call, Bromley at the heart of their community with their new stadium that was built there, Altrincham right at the heart of the town. It's not, on the big outskirts, and Halifax as well. For us, that's a huge part of it. So, the football suffered, but it's actually been the off-pitch stuff that's been driving that, and the lack of identity, the lack of community has been a real issue. So, yeah, look, we are a big club at non-league level. We've won the National League 3 times. But that's no guarantee of success. And the league has just changed. Look at the size of the clubs in the league now. Oldham. Oldham were in the Premier League. The year I was born, Oldham were in the Premier League, and now they're down in the National League and struggling to get out of it. Rochdale are down here. York are down here. We had Wrexham down here for a long time, even before their big Hollywood takeover. Grimsby, Chesterfield, Notts County. So you should never take for granted the kind of the difficulty of this league. But as I said, yeah, we're happy with where we are. I think we probably were the second, third best team in the league in terms of consistency over the course of it. But yeah, the playoffs is something else, and it's going to be a wild ride.
Yeah, it certainly is. And we've got 468 people watching across both channels at the moment, which is brilliant numbers. But what I want to know from the live viewers, who your favourites will be to get promoted via the playoffs this season, because people have already come forward and said we've had, I think, every single club. Someone said so far. Someone's mentioned Halifax, which is, I think, unknown, to be honest. Last season, Notts County, they were the strong favourites. If they didn't get promoted, I think it was a travesty if they didn't, to be brutally honest, because of how much there was a gap between them and third. And even if they didn't, it felt like Chesterfield were going to take that spot because of, the size and stature compared to them and the rest of the sides competing in the playoffs. Daniel, just coming back to you then, of course, having Halifax on Wednesday. Of course, is Halifax a side that you're fearing, and is there any concerns for you going into this playoff campaign? Because I know I look at your form, and it is a little bit mixed. It's not particularly poor, but it's mixed, and you have proven in certain games this season that you can slip up at times.
Yeah, it's been one of those seasons, as I said before, where you'll get a few wins under your belt, then you lose a game, and we just managed to get back on track. There was that period, as I mentioned before, in November, but no, we've been consistently okay. Recently, I don't think we've really lost too many games. There was one against Bromley where we got absolutely played off the park. Bromley it was complete contrast between the game that they played in the FA Trophy, where they seemed a little bit off it. They didn't seem to be the free-flowing Bromley that we've come to know and love. Whereas when we came back a week later, they were just absolutely brilliant. And Michael Cheek scored. And there's a stat that I said during comms, I think every time he scored against the Moors, Bromley have won. And he did do on that occasion. And it was a great win for them. And it's a team that I really don't want to go back to. I'm so glad that we're not going to be going back to Hayes Lane, because it's such a trek. But no, it's a great club, and it was a pleasure to be there. But no, I think with Halifax and the playoffs, we can get to the final. We showed that a couple of years ago. It's going to be tough though, and I think, as everyone said, anything can happen in these playoffs. Any team out of the ones who are in there can get to that final, and that's the joy of it. There's no team who has been in League Two and the Football League for so long and they have a right to be there. It's all these amazing National League clubs, and whatever happens, there's an amazing story being written for the league.
Yeah, there definitely is this season, and that's what I keep repeating and alluding to, is that there's a massive opportunity for all these clubs, and it means so much for them to get promoted. And to be fair, a lot of these clubs, particularly Bromley, Solihull, Halifax, and potentially Barnet after last season, have all been knocking on the door for a number of seasons now. Makala, I want to come to you. How much would it mean if Bromley did get promoted this season?
It's hard to put into words, to be fair. I think the best way to explain it is 2 years ago when we won the FA Trophy, there was a significant part of our fan base, myself included, who just assumed that would be the greatest thing the club ever did. Because, went to Wembley, beat Wrexham, the Hollywood version of Wrexham, 45,000 were there, and you're kind of there soaking in the moment, going, "Oh my God, I've just seen Bromley win in front of 40,000 at Wembley. This is amazing." And people have to understand that the playoff campaigns that we've had either side of that, we've only scraped into the playoffs. It wasn't like we were an established playoff side. 3 years back, we got in on the final day. Last season, we got in with one game to spare and still ended 7th, right? So this season, Bromley have had a kind of meteoric rise over the last 15 seasons. We've gone from being a Ryman 1 South side to now being a side 2 games away from getting into the Football League. So I say that, I guess, to say this is still unbelievable. Everyone's looking at Bromley as kind of this is how you go about doing National League football. Bromley have shown the smaller Isthmian clubs and Conference South clubs that come up, we've shown them the way. We've shown them that you don't have to be relegation strugglers, that you can build. We were in Altringham's position once, and I'd consider Altrincham a bigger club than us historically. But when we first got into the National League 9 seasons ago, we were part-time. We were part-time for at least 3 seasons, I think we were. And then we kind of went the kind of hybrid thing, and then eventually we went full-time. So we've shown people a template as to how you adapt to the National League over a period of time. And this is just the next evolution of that adaptation, which is now we are a top 7 National League side, where I don't think there is any team in the National League, not even Chesterfield, who plays Bromley and goes, well, this is going to be easy. They know that we're going to try and overpower them. They know that they're going to have to earn the points. A little known fact about Bromley this season, we've lost the least number of games in the league this season. Maybe Chesterfield lost the same as us, but we've lost the least number of games in the season. And that, I think, if there is any stat which speaks to how difficult it is to beat Bromley, it's that, right? Only 9 teams have beaten us in a game this season. I don't think anyone's done the double over Bromley. So make no mistake, we are a very well-run National League outfit who, as Andy Woodman loves to say, who go about their business. If Altrincham beat us on Saturday, this is one thing I will say. If Altrincham beat us on Sunday, and if they do well deserved and good for them, but they know they're going to have to play well. They can't just turn up. And I think that's what speaks to Bromley. You can't just turn up and beat Bromley. You basically have to play very, very well. And when those chances come, you better take them, because the one thing you do know is if the chance comes to Cheek, he's taking his. Do you know what I mean? So that's effectively how you see it. But lastly, in terms of if we do get to Wembley, if we do win it, I don't know, man. I think we're all in the same boat. All of us on this call are in the same boat. I don't know. Will there be there might be a few tears or something. I don't know. I don't know. Well, let's just do with the semis.
I am going to ask you guys afterwards as well, Johnny, and Daniel as well. But someone's put a comment in here. I think Bromley've got an advantage on a plastic pitch. Now, Bromley for me are a side that I've wanted to avoid in the playoffs. I think I'd rather play Barnet than Bromley because they play quite a similar type of football to Halifax. Very, like I've mentioned, quite an industrial style of football. It's not the prettiest on the eye, but it's effective. But I think Bromley have probably been more effective than Halifax have been over the course of the season, and that's why they finished third overall and we've not been in Bromley's position, because they've done a better job of what we try to do. I personally think the difference will probably be that they've got a prolific striker and we haven't. But do you think, Michael, that you have got an advantage on this plastic pitch? Of course, if you did get promoted, you'd have to change the pitch to a normal grass pitch, but I don't think you'd care at that point if you did get promoted.
I don't buy this pitch thing. I don't buy it. Most clubs around the country train on 3G, 4G in the middle of a week. I think we've got to move on past this pitch thing now. I feel like people have been saying it for ages. Like, but if are you telling me that clubs around the country no longer don't know how to play on those pitches now? And also, there's other clubs that have had those pitches, and not Maidstone had it last year, and they got relegated. So what are we saying? Dorking had it, they got relegated. So it can't be that Bromley play on a 4G pitch and it's a massive advantage, but Dorking play on one and it's not a massive advantage. If you're good, you're good. Go and look at Bromley's away record. If you're good, you're good. Like, it's your ability to adapt to all situations in all circumstances. I just feel like the pitch thing is a cop-out. I feel like it's an easy cop-out for fans to say, well, they're only good because of that. Mark White, Dorking's manager, has spent much of the season saying the 3G pitch at Dorking is awful and it's contributed to injuries and so on and so forth. So is one 4G good and another one isn't good? Like, it, come on. So everyone else plays on grass. So is there a disadvantage there? That, like, I don't get it. It doesn't make sense as an argument. Did Chesterfield have better grass than Kidderminster? Like what is it then? What are we saying? So I don't think it's an advantage at all, to be fair.
Johnny, I want to come to you then and ask you the same question in a way. How much would it mean to you as an Altrincham fan, especially everything that you've had to go through, where you've had opportunities in the past where you should have been promoted, but due to the voting system, you weren't. You then had the financial issues a few years ago, back-to-back relegations. You've built your way all the way up under the same manager as well. How much would it mean for you if Altrincham could get into the Football League for the first time?
Well, it'd mean the world, and it would to a lot of people that have supported Altrincham a lot longer than myself. You know, I think what Phil Parkinson's done over the last 7 or 8 years at the club has been nothing short of phenomenal. But it's been, to me, it's been everybody pulling together. You know, we talked on this call today about sustainability. We talked about community. We talked about integration, you know, whether it's the academies that Daniel mentioned at Solihull. You know, we've been building an academy at Altrincham as well. But the support from the board, from the volunteers, from the players on the pitch, it's everything. So, you know, it's not really, I'll be delighted, but it's more for those people, you know, the guys that have been through everything with Altrincham over the years. It'd be absolutely fantastic. And as I say, some of the football they're playing is absolutely brilliant. You know, Daniel mentioned Justin Amalazor as well, and a guy that I didn't mention before, but again, he's a game changer as well. We've got some fantastic players. So if we can go and get a result at Bromley and then get to Wembley, absolutely magnificent for the club. It's getting bigger and bigger. The gates are getting bigger. You know, we're getting 3,500, 4,000. Obviously, when the big clubs come, maybe 5,000 as well. Fantastic. And it's just all going in the right direction. But, you know, as you said, he's been paying before this. It's been a lot of pain. But now the good investments going in there. There's been good signings. We talk about players coming in from league clubs on loan. People want to come to Altrincham now because they see the football that Phil Parkinson and Neil Sauville play, and they want to be part of that. And that's fantastic for us as a club. So whatever happens, this has been a fantastic season for Altrincham Football Club.
It certainly has. And, you know, I think out of all the sides in the play-up, maybe Solihull as well, because of what happened with them, where a lot of their players left, like Dallas left, of course. The manager left as well. Maybe you'd say Solihull would have been a massive surprise, but they've had that experience in the past when they've done it. Altrincham, I think, although I thought the recruitment was well, I did not expect them to finish inside the playoffs, and they have overachieved. And what it does feel like is it's not a one-season thing. It does feel like if you do not get promoted this season, you'll be back again next season. Is that something that you would agree with? Do you think that this Altrincham side, it does feel like it's going to stick together and go places, and you'll be able to recruit better like you have done this season?
Yeah, I do. I think it's I think one of the key things is the culture at the club. The culture at the club's really, really good. You get players that leave the club, like, we've got Joel Senior, who's at Morecambe, been their player of the season. Fantastic player. You knew he was going to play higher, but you get them liking tweets when Altrincham get a victory. So players that move away from the club have still got a connection. Now, that's fantastic. That is brilliant to see. Jordan Hume, he's still got, even though he's done brilliantly with Radcliffe Borough this year, promoted in the Northern Premier League, he still likes to see what's going on at Alty because the culture's right. It's right across. And that's from the board, from the managers, from the volunteers, from everybody connected. The media team led by Brian Flynn, brilliant at Altrincham. We're going in the right direction. The academy is picking up as well. But you need that connectivity. You need that culture. And you need that long-term sustainability, which I think Ian mentioned on the call tonight. It's really important. So, yeah, why not? Keep going. 4th this season. I mean, that's unbelievable for a club of Altrincham. We talked about budgets before. We don't have a big budget. To finish 4th is absolutely off the scale. It's brilliant. But we think we can go further. We really do.
And that's what's so good about Altrincham is that there's that ambition. It's not like a case of, we've had a brilliant season. Now, we've done a bit. Anything else is a bonus. It feels like there's that expectation now where you have that opinion that you can actually go further as well. Solihull Moors then, like I said, they're probably another side that have surprised a lot this season. And there always is one or two sides, but there's been quite a number this season. I put it to them 18th, 19th. It was something silly like that. And my co-host predicted them to finish 20, I think, first in the bottom relegations place. I want to get what your opinion would be if you could get promoted, because you have been within minutes of getting promoted into the Football League, to be fair to you guys, haven't you, in the past? What would it mean for Solihull to get promoted?
Again, a lot like Johnny, it's you can't put it into words. It's the community that comes to these National League clubs. Like, the supporters who are going to every single away game, they're there every single week at the Armco. They'll always be talking after the game, and that's their life. They love to go to the Moors. It's just a wonderful community. It's not the biggest community in the world, and that's why it's so good. And to get promoted, it validates all the work that everybody's put into Solihull. I think if you go to most supporters and say, what do you think about Solihull? They've either not got an opinion about them, they're not flashy. It's not, I guess, cool in the National League to go and support Solihull. I've heard people's opinions about them. But for the community of Solihull to get to the EFL for the first time in their history would just be such a magnificent achievement. But even if that doesn't happen, they've got to Wembley for the first time in their history when they go to the FA Trophy final. When we played Bromley in the Cup, that was Solihull's first ever time in a semi-final of the FA Trophy. This season, Andy Winger's given the Moors fans so much, and it's just a great opportunity to attempt to go up. Like, it's a free shot, if you will. It's not like anybody's expecting that Solihull must go up this season. It's about having these experiences, going to Wembley, potentially doing well in the playoffs. And then I think the biggest thing of all, having a plan for next season. Where do you go from here? If you don't get promoted, if clubs cherry pick players off the moors from League Two, how do we then build to prevent what happened 2 years ago when the Moors then consequently, after losing in the final, lost a lot of players and then they were down the bottom end of the table? We can't have that happen again. So it's all about the plan for the Moors after the playoffs, whether that's in the EFL, whether that's in the National League. But no, it's a great opportunity. It is for all of us. And as I said many times, it's just such a wonderful playoffs this year. And whatever happens, it couldn't have happened to better clubs, because all the clubs here today, the grounds that I've been to, and met all the media teams, met their supporters when I do my notes in. I like to go to little bars or little pubs before the game and just get to meet the locals, have a chat with them, see what their club's all about. And every single one of these teams in the call, absolutely brilliant. And it couldn't happen to a nicer club, whoever gets promoted.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I'd agree, to be honest. And that's what's nice is the fact when the side gets promoted, there won't be a side that I'm a bit like, oh, they don't deserve promotion. I think every one of these sides do. And of course, if there was an Oldham, they would as well. But there's no like manufactured club. I won't mention any names, but I think we all know who they are, who clearly just spent loads of money to try and get in this position without particularly having the fan base to justify it. And but I'm going to ask you all one final question, unless you guys have anything to add, as I know we've been going on for quite a while, but I've been properly enjoying the conversation. Johnny, I'll come to you first. Who do you fear the most in the playoffs, and who would you be backing to get promoted if it wasn't to be Altrincham?
Well, Phil Parkinson always says in his post-match interviews, which I always enjoy doing with him, and the media team do, he always says, it's the next game. The next game's the most important game, right? So when you say who do we fear most, we fear Bromley, because that will be one hell of a tough game. So the next game is always your toughest game. So, we'll head into that. We'll give it everything, but it won't be easy, but we've got nothing to lose. And as Mikel says on the call, I think he's right in it as well. I think, the pressure's probably on Barnet and Bromley, isn't it? Let's be honest. And we'll go there, and we're in good form. We're scoring lots of goals. We're solid at the back. We'll take a good away following. We were always really noisy on the journeys, and we'll give it absolutely everything. And we can score goals. Make no mistake about that. We can score goals from all over the pitch. So, but it's going to be tough. Mikel mentions Michael Cheek. There's not just Michael Cheek to worry about, by the way, from Bromley. Bromley are a very well structured side, but Michael Cheek, he is one hell of a specimen, that man. He really is. It's tough. Lewis Baines, Jake Cooper, Eddie Jones and Lewis Banks and the keeper, will know they've been in a game on Sunday for sure.
Daniel, I'm going to come to you then. Who is it that you fear the most in these playoffs?
Oh, we have the worst record against Altrincham. Lost 6-1, lost 1-0 at the Armco. We just can't seem to get in any sort of rhythm against them. But then I don't want to play Bromley as well. Like, you bring Michael Cheek into the game, he's scoring to a free if you give him the chances on a play. And you've also got Passley, Ben Crowhouse. Crowhouse has scored in every game he's played against the Moors, I think at least in recent history. They've just got such a well-organised and drilled team. And Andy Woodman's done a sensational job. Like, he just has. Yeah, it's those clubs, Altrincham and Bromley, where I don't want to play them. Barnet, we got 2 draws against them. I know we can get goals. Halifax, we beat them. We beat you already this season. I know that we can win the game. But as I said in the chat as we were discussing things, is that like with Halifax, you go into the Armco, and the Moors have been so much better away. We've managed just to get our patterns of play much more spot on when we've visited other teams rather than at home. And I know Andy Wing said quite a bit, especially early season, that we're still waiting for that perfect home performance. And he kept saying it. And it was like, has he come yet? And then you looked at the performance and you're like, no, like you might have got wins, but it wasn't as good as the team performance as the Moors were away. And that's why I fear having the game at the Armco is just for that reason. I think Halifax could really turn up and play well, and you're good away. So it's going to be a really good battle. And it's one of the reasons why I would have preferred Gateshead away if that would have happened, because at home they beat us, away we won. And it's just that is us, the Moors away, are just so much better.
I go, like as a Halifax fan, I go into this playoff campaign just kind of happy to be there. In recent playoff campaigns, I've always had that expectation that we should be getting into the Football League. The season we finished fourth, Daniel, you'll remember it was a battle for us, between us, to get that third place. And I think over the course of the season, we were in the top three for a longer period of time than you. I think you had a brilliant run towards the end of the season, and that's why you sneaked in. And then after that, we weren't going into the playoffs on much form. However, we were playing a Chesterfield side that was seventh. We took 4 points off them all season, a bit like you guys have with us. And we were the favourites. Yet on the day they turned up, and that's why I don't think there's much of a difference between if you're at home or away in a playoff campaign. I think it is literally whoever turns up on the day will win. And for me, I just go into this with no expectation, and the pressure's on you because you're the home side. So for me, I'm fairly confident, but I'm preparing myself for when I believe we will lose. Although I'm quite optimistic, because I think overall we're not expected to do anything. Nobody expects us to do anything. People would like us to, but I think most people in their mind would think that there's a better side than us out there. And to be fair, four sides now are better than us in the playoffs overall, because they've proven that throughout the season. But on the day, anything can happen.
It's a great little tie. It really is. Moors v Halifax. Any one of those two teams could win it. And then it's an unexpected side that reaches the semi-finals, and then who knows what can happen from there. But you know what? Earlier today, I was looking into potentially getting a ticket for Altrincham against Halifax. I was going to go to the game, have a rest from commentating, and just be there to enjoy a bit of football. Altrincham playing free-flowing stuff with Con Clark, Regan Linney, and Justin Amaluza, and seeing who is playing Altrincham versus Halifax. Yeah, and just seeing how Halifax play as well in the game. And that would have been absolutely amazing little day, that would have been. But no, nationally had to go and scuff my plans, didn't they?
To be fair, overall, I would like to play Altrincham. If at any point, I would love to play them, because I just feel overall, I've got a feeling that we would win. You know, the FA Trophy, what happened this season, we took 4 points off them. For me, overall, I think we know how to deal with Altrincham, because they play quite a contrasting style. They kind of play into our hands in a way, because they come at us, we allow them to have the ball, but they can't break us down, and then we just catch them on the break like we did it at your place. So for me, if there's a side that I want to face in these playoffs at any point, the ideal side would be Altrincham, not at home, which it won't be. So sorry to tell you that, Johnny. I know you've got a bit of smirk on your face there, but Michael, I'll come to you then. Any sides that you're fearing, and who would you be backing if it's not to be Bromley to get promoted this season via the playoffs?
I mean, Halifax have the hardest job. That I think we can all agree on that. To have to go to Solihull, and then even if they win that, have to go to Barnet, to then go to Wembley. I think we can all agree that the Halifax are probably not the favourites, right? Which leaves the remaining four. I've seen Bromley play all of the teams in the playoffs this season. Halifax twice, Altrincham once, Solihull twice, Barnet twice. I think I'm still going to stick to what I said at the beginning. I perhaps fear teams like Altrincham more than Andy Woodman does. Every time I've said before a game this season, this is a clash of styles, and it's like Altrincham. So Altrincham came to us, drew 2-2. I think, who was it? Got a brilliant free kick at the end. Newby, I want to say it was Newby. Maybe got a brilliant free kick. It was on TV, I think, right at the death. We won 2-1 at their place, and they battered us, to be fair. But Bromley did what they do, which is Altrincham should have got something out of that game, and we stole it at the end, which is a Bromley thing to do. Solihull are a better ball playing side than us, but when we won 3-0 the other day, we just kind of did what Bromley do. We just overpowered them. We went to Barnet a couple of weeks ago. Barnet had tons more possession than us. But when moments mattered, we looked like the better team in terms of being able to actually be clinical in the final third or create opportunities in the final third. Bromley, to steal an Atletico Madrid saying here, Bromley love to suffer. They love to play without the ball. Yes, Dan, it was offside. but listen, I think Solihull, I maintain Solihull are the dark horses. If I was Dan and Solihull beat Halifax, I would be going to Barnet on Saturday thinking, I think we can do them. There's something about that game. If Halifax beat Solihull and go to Barnet, respectfully, Luke, I think Barnet will probably win that game. If just because I can't see Halifax, everyone forgets that Halifax have had to play about 100 games as well in different places and so on and so forth. I just think it'd be one step too far for Halifax. If Solihull do Halifax though and then go to Barnet, I think Solihull could play party poopers. If Altrincham beat us and go to Wembley, I think every team will find it very difficult to play Altrincham on a big Wembley pitch. I just think people need to bear that in mind. And then the final thing I would just say, and this is more so for Solihull and Altrincham more than Barnet. Barnet are the most similar side to us out of everyone, and Halifax in the playoffs. Solihull have Jamie Osborne and Joel, I never say surname right, Sabara, I always say surname wrong. And I see players like that as tempo dictators. You stop those two, I think you stop Solihull. Altrincham, I know they've got Linney, I know they've got I always say his name wrong, Almazor, etc.
Almazor, yeah.
Yeah. But if you stop Con Clark, you're going a long way. Like if Bromley shut down Con Clark over 90 minutes, yes, Altrincham have other players, but that is quite significant in hindering what Altrincham can do. So I think all things said, I think Barnet therefore probably play are probably the hardest team for Bromley to play because it'll be a similar style. There'll be two teams who love to kind of go for the overpowering style and go in long when they need to go long and so on and so forth. If Solihull and Altrincham can get the ball playing, going well, and dictate play and break the lines, I think both Barnet and Bromley find it difficult to beat those two sides.
Do you not potentially think when you take that point about Halifax, do you not think potentially if they beat Solihull, they'd be going on with that momentum, which would benefit them, where Barnet wouldn't have played in over a week. Halifax will be going in on momentum away from home, where they're better away from home than what they are at home. Like I keep repeating, there wouldn't be that expectation there where they would be on Barnet because they're the home side and they've finished second over the season. Do you not think that potentially if Halifax got through because of that momentum, it could potentially pull them through, like we saw with Grimsby a few seasons ago?
Yes and no, and I'll explain why yes and no. Yes, in the sense of if Halifax go through, there is big pressure on Barnet to win. Nobody's in it. If Halifax go through, everyone expects Barnet to win that. If Solihull go through, everyone's like, oh, that's 50-50. Do you see where I'm coming from? So I think it plays in Halifax. If Halifax can get past Solihull, it plays in their favour against Barnet, because I genuinely think there is an issue there with Barnet being expected to win that match. Which plays into Halifax's hands, because then if I'm Halifax, I'm just like, right, set up, banks of 4, low block, try and get through us, because we're bound to do something on the counter. We're bound to create at least one opportunity at some time. Whereas if Solihull go to Barnet, Solihull are going to Barnet looking to impose themselves against Barnet. Do you see what I mean? And saying, okay, let's go toe to toe. Who's going to win over this 90 minutes? And Barnet are being a bit more wary in that sense. So I do think you've got a point, Luke, but only because there's a clash in approach and a heightened expectation if it's Halifax who go through.
Like I keep repeating, for me, the only side that I would fear in these playoffs is Bromley. Of course, I keep repeating as well that Altrincham are the side that I want to be playing in that final, because I think overall, I think on a day we would beat them. But the only side for me that I'm actually fearing at the moment is Bromley. They're the side that I want to avoid. I think Barnet away, I just think if we won that game, there'd be that momentum there. And the way Barnet have played, with them being the home side, they'd have to come at us. And like you've mentioned, we'd have that low block. We'd just catch them on the break. And I think that plays into our advantage in a way. So for me, overall, I'm fairly optimistic going into these playoffs. I think we've come to a point, unless if anyone's got anything to add, please say something now if any of you've got anything to add. But if anyone has.
I think for me, just one point, we're all looking forward to these playoffs, right? Every club has worked so hard over the season to get there. Yeah. But I've got to touch on this again. I'm just so gutted for Gateshead. I just think, this whole show, Gateshead should be involved in these playoffs. I feel for the fans, the club, the chairman, everything. And I think it was Mikel's point when we started the call. This is an absolute shambles and a disgrace that this has come. Decisions been made by the National League at this late stage. I just, it's shocking, and for me, it's so important that we raise that point, because that cannot happen again. Something like this, it's leaving everything. Nobody knows where they're going, where the next game is, whether they've got days off, whether they've not got days off. Gateshead have worked so hard throughout the season to get into the playoffs. They're appealing it, aren't they? I don't even know whether they appeal or what will happen with that, but that to me at the moment is so pivotal to what we've talked about tonight, and I don't think we should lose sight of that. But on the other hand, I wish everyone well in the playoffs, because every club on here tonight deserves to be in those playoffs.
Yeah, go on, Daniel.
Yeah, I completely concur. It's absolutely devastating for Gateshead. What a club! The staff that work there, the supporters, they are just brilliant, and the team has played excellently this season. Some of the best football we've seen in the National League, and I just think sporting integrity is massively at risk when you're not allowing them to compete, because you play for a 46-game season, you've got into the playoffs, and then you're not allowed to even do it. There must be some way where this could be sorted out, instead of just going, the rules are the rules, which we created how many years ago, we need to stick to them. It just doesn't make sense in this day and age, and no, it's not right, and it's devastating. It's put a bit of a murky feeling on tonight's call and on the playoffs as a whole, because they deserve to be competing in those playoffs and seeing if they could get to the EFL.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. I think overall, when I was preparing this, I was expecting to have everyone here, the Gateshead fans as well, and it's upsetting, because it's not a case of it's nothing to do with on the field, it's nothing to do with the fans or the players. That's what's so frustrating about this. They haven't actually even broken any rules or anything. It's not like they've had an eligible player, or they've spent too much money and it's gone under financial fair play rules. They've literally done nothing wrong, and I think it is down to the council, and that's something that I want to add as well. There's a number of clubs, including ourselves to a certain extent, that our councils are neglecting us. We've seen with our pitch, the whole reason that we've had to move away from the Shea and play at Accrington and Chesterfield is because the council have neglected the pitch and not put it up to scratch. For a number of seasons, I should say, we've basically been telling the council that we need to sort this pitch out, and they've just done nothing about it. And that's what's so frustrating, is the fact that councils are neglecting football clubs. And I thought it'd be an asset to the community, something like that, and it's an outlet for a lot of people, and it's just very frustrating when you're seeing things like this happen to Gateshead, particularly at the moment, because it's not fair. They've worked all season so hard to get into this position, and to be taken away from them at such short notice when none of us knew anything about it until yesterday. It just feels so cruel and unfair to those fans.
Why are Coldbank being so harsh with you guys? Like, why aren't they sorting out the pitch at the Shea? Because out of the entire National League, I think the Shea is one of the most impressive stadiums. You walk past like the little bank, and then you come across the massive sign saying the Shea. And I think, especially the media box, it's like a double door. It opens and you see the middle of the pitch. There's not a sight more beautiful in non-league.
To be honest, I think I think most councils are struggling financially to actually put money into the football things, because it's not a priority, and I do understand that to a certain extent. I understand it's not going to be a priority in the whole of the world, but it's frustrating at the same time. And I think what's happening with Halifax particularly at the moment is the council have literally basically come out and said we're wanting to sell the ground and give it back to the football club, which was who owned it originally. And it's looking like the football club and the rugby are hoping to take it over at the end of next season. So they're not going to be spending any money on adding to the ground and making it a better match day experience, and then also sorting the pitch out. if they're looking to sell it. So for me, that's probably why I'd say that. Michael, have you got anything to add before we bring things to a close?
No, just to echo, to be fair, just to echo what Johnny said, I think we started the show with it, sorry, and I think we should end with it. Like, Gateshead have been shafted. Simple as that. And it sounds, the winning team won't care at Wembley because everyone will be celebrating. Whoever, if it's one of our 4 teams, will all be celebrating, going, "Oh my God, Football League, wow, wow, wow." But there will always be a stench over these playoffs because of how the National League dealt with it. There'll always be a kind of, this wasn't right. This wasn't right. Like Altrincham, and that's no disrespect to Altrincham at all. They got fourth, but Altrincham got a bye through to the semi. I haven't even spoken about the fact that Bromley could easily be turning around right now going, well, hold on a minute. What was the point in us coming third? We might as well have just come fourth and taken the bye that Altrincham got. Now, obviously, we're at home and there is an advantage to the fact that we're at home. But the point is, you've had a whole season of teams thinking second and third's an advantage, right? And then on the day after the season, the National League goes, hold a minute, some of you can have a bye as well. Like, it's a mockery. It's an absolute mockery of the season. So there will be, no matter how we look at it, there will be a stench over this season. And you know what? Totally avoidable as well. And that's what makes it worse. It didn't have to go down like this. And I just worry about, we already face a battle as a football league to convince the EFL that we're on par with League Two and we deserve 3 up. We deserve 3 up, 3 down, and we shouldn't be having just one automatic promotion place. Every time the National League does something which makes us look tin pot and non-league, it kind of kicks the can further down the road as to our credibility to be able to say, no, actually, the League Two and the National League are on par with one another. Do you see what I mean? So just kind of wanted to just end with that.
Yeah, I think Mikel, absolutely. You know, the summary there, Gateshead have been shafted. I mean, what a line to end on. I think it's absolutely perfect. But just Daniel's just put something in the chat as well. One of the most entertaining National League seasons as well. What we've got to remember is the quality of National League football is getting better and better and better every season. We're getting all this TV coverage. There's quality players that are making it into the Football League. I mentioned Joel Senior, who went from Altrincham to Morecambe, is their player of the season this year. You know, and that happens all across the leagues. It's so important that we have that integrity, that transparency, and this has left, as Mikel mentioned there, a stench really in terms of how it's been handled. And every club, no matter where you are and where you finished in this playoffs, feel the same about it, without a doubt.
I think that's probably a good way to end things, to be honest, lads. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you guys tonight. Someone actually put a comment in earlier basically saying you need to get, and this is when everyone was here, you need to get all these people on again because they've all spoken very well. And it is, and that's what has been good about tonight. You know, you've all come across with your points, and it's been very brilliant to talk to you. As well, thank you to everyone that's also tuned in. I've never, ever seen numbers like this on a live stream before. 610 people are currently watching as I'm speaking now in the top left of my corner across Twitter and YouTube. So thank you to everyone that, of course, has tuned in. I know quite a large proportion of that are watching on Twitter. So for those that are watching on Twitter, please drop me a follow on there if you haven't. And then also check out the YouTube, because there'll be lots of content over the next couple of weeks and during the off-season surrounding the Vanarama National League. Lads, once again, thank you for joining me. Thank you to our sponsors, Cards Accepted, for sponsoring us throughout the full season. Please use the link in the description if you're watching on YouTube to get 50% off your order. And I think with that being said, good luck to you guys in the playoffs, apart from Solihull Moors for the time being. That might change. And I will speak to you guys soon. Bye for now.